Are you struggling to hire, onboard, train, and retain your technicians? What's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Masker, where we focus on helping guide you to a prosperous blue collar business. Today, we have with us Danielle Wernert. Danielle was recently named an HVAC News 40 Under 40 recipient. She is dedicated to building technician training solutions quickly and creatively. With experience closing more than $500,000 in sponsorship funds, partnering with Veteran Affairs to secure benefits for qualifying team members, and aligning training goals for both large-scale corporations and small-scale mom-and-pop shops, we are confident that our new hiring, training, career pathways can make a difference. That's what Danielle believes in. Danielle Wernert, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. What's going on today?
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to talk to you and talk to all of your listeners about training the technicians in their companies.
Yeah, I'm super excited to jump into this. And the way we start every show, really just want to get a good idea of how did you get to where you are today? How did your journey take you to being somebody in charge and building an organization that helps other, tech companies train their technicians in, more of the technical skills? Because we were talking before the show, there's a lot of sales training, there's a lot of, 12-step process, 11-step process, but a lot of times the technical training for the trades kind of gets left out and we just kind of rely on people's experience. So how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working for a local company. So I worked for Peterman Brothers here out in Indiana for about 5 years. And I was part of the team that started their Top Tech Academy. And so we really wanted to find a way to grow our own talent. How do we get new people into the trades industry that maybe are green off the street and don't have any experience in, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all that good stuff. So started the Top Tech Academy and it was fantastic. We had over 3,500 applications throughout my time there. We put through 200 students in that program. So we learned a lot of do's and definitely a lot of don'ts. But eventually shifted to continued education. And I really found a passion in helping other companies. We would have companies come tour all the time and they wanted to learn how we were doing things. And I got to meet with them individually and answer their questions about where do you even start? I want to do training, or I already have training, but it's not going the way I want it to. And really just building that rapport and those questions really kind of sparked a passion for me. So I love being able to help other companies kind of find the strategy to make up their training programs. So eventually I went to Chad, who was the owner of the company, and I said, hey, I really want to have a man-to-man conversation with you. Everybody in this industry knows everybody, so I want to be very transparent in what my goals are for myself. And I think that to fill my own cup, I want to do this full time. Like I want to go help other companies. And so he kind of thought about it for a few days, talked about what that meant, what are you going to be doing for these other companies and things like that, and came back and he said, consider this my blessing. Yes, if this is what you want to do with your life and this is what's going to give you purpose, absolutely go for it. But it is a conflict of interest, so you can't do it at the same time while you're here, which I assumed was going to be the case, but I was hoping I'd be wrong, but that's okay. So kind of had to go back to the drawing board a little bit at home and say, okay, if this is really something we're going to do, we're going to jump in both feet and we need to be ready for that. So spent a few months focusing, building out a website, all of that good stuff. And then just decided to jump in both feet. And now Upskilled Consulting was born.
Awesome. And here we are. So with Upskilled Consulting, there's obviously you're filling a lot of gaps in the technician pathway, the career pathway, training
Yeah.
them. You've learned a lot of the do's, you've learned a lot of the don'ts. One of my biggest frustrations of being in the trades, and historically, a lot of times we and even our technicians see themselves as, oh, I'm just a plumber, or I'm just an electrician, or I'm just an HVAC tech. And they don't really see themselves as, I have a career path. They see themselves as like, well, I couldn't go to college, so I'm stuck with this. In your opinion, why is that thinking wrong? Why is a career path so important to our technicians out there working on, the day-to-day stuff?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So such a good question. So when you have a career path, not only are you going to be more invested in yourself, but you kind of get to set the bar for yourself. And you're like, hey, I know that this is where I want to go in my career, and this is what I have to do to accomplish that goal. And so many companies are in these. They have these titles of, oh, you're a maintenance technician or you're a service technician. And so it can feel very like it can feel like a really long time goes by between getting a promotion, and you kind of start to doubt yourself, or you start to get a little frustrated and okay, well, I feel like I'm ready, but why am I not getting promoted? Why am I just stuck in the same spot all the time? And so career paths kind of came into play when it's breaking down those roles into micro levels. So now you can have, instead of just a service tech, now you have a service one, a service two, a senior one, a senior two. The sky is kind of the limit as far as where your career path goes. But it gives your technicians intentional goals to accomplish so they keep developing themselves and they keep growing. Everybody's in a job for the money, right? Very few people would work in the world if money wasn't there to cover their bills and their responsibilities. So, setting those career paths also gives them more objective ways to earn more income and earn their growth potential.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit. People are probably listening like, yeah, that's cool, great idea,
Yeah.
but what does it really matter if you're a service tech one or you're junior, whatever you want to call these people, and you create the pathway of, hey, one day you can be service manager or general manager. You can build this out for them.
Yeah.
But if you have four different levels of service techs, how do we actually like build that out from a, hey, this is what your scorecard is, or this is what we're going to hold you accountable on, or this is how we track your progress, or these are the expectations? Because I feel that's probably where a lot of people fall short. And then a lot of the technicians get frustrated because like, well, they call me this, but I don't know really actually what that means. So what can we
Absolutely.
do to actually put that into operation in our organization?
Yeah, so that's what I've spent years. So I will tell you, like career pathing, and people call it all different things. Career pathing can take years to build out. It is one of the most robust projects I've ever been a part of, and so it's finding all those KPIs are important. Your revenue, your average ticket, your membership sales, all of that is important. But there's so much more to career pathing than just that. And so it's finding ways that you can gamify it if you can. We do a leadership academy for technicians and really company wide, but how do you turn learning into a fun journey? And so when you have those a lot of like checklists of, okay, these are the skills that you need to know. Identify exactly which skills they need to know at what point in their career. And that opens up, okay, if you're learning mini split skills, then okay, now you're qualified to go into a home with a mini split. It opens more doors for more customers, more, clients that you can get into. So the technical skills is a huge, huge one. That is one that, we made a master list of what are all of the skills that a residential HVAC technician needs to know or a residential plumber needs to know. And each of those came back with over 500 skills. And so it's very, very overwhelming to just be like, yeah, I'm going to make a career path. There's so much to it. So technical skills is huge. KPIs are important, what KPIs are important to your business, but also those soft skills and just gamify it and make it fun.
Yeah, no, and when you can make it fun, and what I have found is once they start to feel the change and they start to get bought in, and then it's like, oh, now this makes sense. Now I want that thing, right? Like the Great Game of Business talks about it. That's a great book for y'all that are listening. Check it out, Great Game of Business. But it is gamifying a lot of different things, but also showing them something that they probably never thought was possible. Because let's be honest, a lot of times our technicians got into the trades, like I referenced earlier, is just like, well, that was kind of the only thing the only thing I could do, when really they're more valuable than, most people in our country, because without them, we wouldn't be very healthy. So when we start to put that in place, we start bringing new people in our organization. We're going to onboard them. We're going to train them. You've seen it. I've seen it. I promise you, there's people listening. You're probably being seen right now if you're listening, that you give people keys to the truck first day. Hey, go run that call. Just go be an installer and go do what you told me you can do. Or hey, go ride along with Joe for a couple of weeks. He'll tell me how you do, and then we'll get your own truck.
Yeah.
That kind of like throws out all the things we just talked about. So why is day one onboarding and training so important to really start off on the right foot of, this is day one, but this is where you can go in the future?
Yeah, no, good question. So your day one is your first impression. So we say all the time, you don't get to make your first impression twice, right? You get one shot at it. And so just like when you're walking in the front door and you're meeting your first customer of the day, when your business opens the door and that employee walks in for their first day, that's your first impression for them. And your goal should be that they stay there for years and they love it and they're joining your company family, and that they're all about everything that you guys as a business are. So day one is your first opening the blinds into that industry, I guess. So your day one's important, but also past day one. So you hear all the time, like, oh, we do 30, 60, 90s. Like, we'll do a check-in at your 30 days. Well, what does that mean? And usually, most often, someone will say that, but then life happens. Customers call in, the jobs have to be run, and those meetings don't happen. So having a really robust new hire experience is so important because you're taking the subjectivity out of it. Hey, go jump in Joe Schmo's truck and he's going to tell me how you did, how he felt you did. That's what you're getting back. You're not getting back a graded rubric. You're not getting back numbers and data, and you're not having a manager go out and do a supervised ride along with a checklist and all of these things. So all of those pieces are important to not only get them involved in the business, that in the way that you operate it, but also to set them up for success, because they're eventually going to have the keys to their own truck and they're going to be representing you. So you want them set up for the most success.
Yeah, no, and when you were talking about sending to somebody else, especially from the technical side, our technicians they take so much pride in their work. They're usually hesitant to let Joe Schmo do any technical work anyway. So they're like, well, how did you, I don't know, like I had to get the job done. I had to get it done right. And I didn't trust him. I don't know him. So I don't really like, he just kind of hung out all day. It's like, well, that guy was probably so nervous because he didn't know what to do all day either, because he's day one in the company. So
Yeah.
how do we actually get technical training done, graded? I know you've talked about training rooms and some of the content you put out, but like if our listeners listen, like, man, you're right. I don't really do a lot of good technical training, or I do a little bit and then I just, get busy. What is that? What does an actual like roadmap to technical training look like? So we can actually tell these people, this is where you're at. In order to get to the next level, this is where you need to be. And this is how you get there. This is exactly how to actually do the thing you need to learn. What does that look like?
Yeah. So for us, it's mapping out, okay, well, what does the career pathway look like? First of all, you can't drive if you don't have the map, right? So we build out the map first. And then when you're bringing somebody into the company the first time, there are ways that in the dashboards that we build out, you can create self-assessments. So, hey, technician, you're coming in for day one or week one, whenever it falls in your timeline. I want you to self-assess where you feel in each of these skills. And then we've got calculations kind of in the background that can kind of spit out that answer and say, okay, based on this technician's self-assessment, this is where they feel they are. Without telling them, which skills go within which tier, because then you're going to get everybody saying, oh yeah, I know how to do all of it. Pay me the most money. So there's a lot of strategy behind the calculations in the background. But self-assessments are a great start. I always recommend, so I help clients take their tune-up process, or whatever your basic fundamental skill is in your service, and let's turn that into a quantifiable assessment. So instead of just, here's a checklist of step 1, step 2, step 3, okay, let's make each of those worth points. Let's create a digital exam. And then now you as a manager or as a supervisor or trusted senior tech can go in and observe this technician, preferably in a lab space or an employee home, a controlled environment where you can, and there just have them go through that fundamental skills, like make sure they've got the basics first and have them run through that. And then it can spit out a score at the end. You can set a threshold of, okay, if you're under 90% or under 93%, we need you to retest because you're not quite where we need you to be. But if you start with those basic skills, that kind of helps you map, okay, this person's going to need more support, or maybe they're a little bit ahead of where I thought they might be.
Yeah. So that brought up another question, because I know a lot of people run into this. You referenced it. So-and-so said they can do all the things, so we hired them.
Yep.
And then they get out on day one and they don't know how to do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of mind blowing to me is like, you kind of realize you knew this was going to happen. If you tell us you can do something, it's black and white. You can either do it or you can't. You can't really fake it if you don't know how to actually technically do it. So do you recommend, did you guys do anything? Do you do anything like pre-hiring in like the entire recruiting process of having them actually go do technical stuff in a training room, or have them send you videos? How do you help people overcome that issue? Because I know that's an issue a lot, where they say they can do something, they show up day one, they can't do it. It's like, well, we just wasted all this time on this person.
100%. Yeah. So as far as like having them do a hands-on technical assessment, I will be honest, like HR is not my background. So I don't know the legalities of like what you can require and what you can't in an interview process. So I have not personally ever like made that a part of the interview process. There are plenty of, technical skill quizzes that you can have them do, or what I recommend people is just try and get as strategic about your interview questions as possible, specifically with those technical questions, whether it's a scenario question or just flat out a calculation, like tell me how you calculate XYZ. But what I've learned in this scenario is because we've absolutely had technicians come in with 20 years of experience. We're like, oh my gosh, 20 years, give them whatever they want. They have to be great. They know all of it, right? And so we hire them and we're like, hey, because you know skills XYZ that are difficult, we assume you know skills ABC that are a little bit easier. And so that assumption there is kind of what hurts us. So when you get these technicians that come in an interview, it's impossible to run through all 500 of those skills, right? And it's what I've learned is that it's usually just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. In your interview, you have such a short window. You can't ask them every single question, every single skill that exists. They might not know. They don't know what they don't know, right? So if you ask them a question about toilet repair and they think, okay, I know these 5 skills in toilet repair. I know how to fix toilets, but really there's 15 skills in toilet repair. They don't know the other 10 that they didn't know. So it's kind of that balance of when you bring somebody in, just doing those assessments at the beginning, it's going to take time, but it's going to be inevitable a little bit. You're going to have to train. You're not going to find a technician out there that knows every single skill that there is to know. And if you do, you found a unicorn. So don't let them go.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of asking them like, a calculation type question.
Yeah.
So I used to be in the electrical world, and just using an example for the listeners out there, instead of asking somebody, do you know how to install an EV charger? Instead, you could say, if you were to install an EV charger and give them a scenario, what would you do to, what would your thought process be and how would you actually execute on
1000%.
that? Then you can kind of figure out, do they know what they're talking about? Because I think a lot of times we forget all that and we're just like, well, do you know how to do a tune-up? Do you know how to change a toilet? Do you know how to, put in a hot water tank? They're going to be like, yeah, I know how to do that. But then if you actually ask them how or they do it, they might not actually know how to do it. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of great insight and advice there. So now when it comes to like ongoing regular training with your people on a weekly basis, depending on where their skill level is, obviously huge. When it comes to building out a training room in a shop, I know a lot of people are like, I don't have room for that. I don't have time for that. Even if I had it, I don't have time to train people on how to do that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the value of building out an actual training room, in your shop so you can, have it right there for you?
Yeah. I think the investment is a million times worth it. I don't think you need to start with the bells and whistles. I think it can be very easy to get in there and be like, oh my gosh, well, this company had this and this company has this, and we need everything shiny and brand new. And actually, I recommend people start with not everything shiny and brand new, which was a hard lesson learned in our first couple of semesters. So, do you need a training lab? It doesn't have to be, a 10,000 square foot warehouse. But do you need a training space? Yes, 1,000% you need a training space. It can be an old system that maybe you're upgrading a customer system and their system hasn't quite, exhausted its life. It's just a little bit older and they wanted an upgrade. Keep that old system. Find a place that you can, plug it in and reinstall it. And then students, if they're breaking it, it's okay. It's an old system. You're just going to replace it with another one. There are little ways that you can find affordable means to build out your lab over time. It doesn't have to be shiny and brand new. So,
Yeah, I mean that's great advice because I think a lot of times we fall into the trap of looking at things on social media and like, oh man, look at their training room. I want that, but I can't do it. So I'm not going to do anything until I can do that. Whereas,
mhm.
just getting started is the first step to getting there. Otherwise, we'll never get there.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. So for our listeners that are curious, and I'm curious, how do you work with companies in the trades? I know mainly you focus on HVAC, but like, what does your process look like? How do you help them, really implement everything we've talked about?
Yeah. So my experience is definitely HVAC, plumbing and electrical. Plumbing, I don't know what it is about plumbing. I have a special love for it. But yeah, so I have not worked with like remediation or garage or anything like that, but I definitely feel like the model is quite similar. So for me at Upskilled, we would basically sit down, we would talk about your training goals. And usually my clients typically pick a career pathways where we're going to build out that career path and those technical assessments and those digital forms, or they pick a new hire experience. Those are like the two main buckets that I specialize in. And so what we're going to do is I then go and I absorb the material that you can share with me, your employee handbook, your any skill assessments that you already have. I'll try and incorporate those things for you. But what's really cool about the way that I do things is think of like going into a bookstore and you've got a basket in your hand, right? And you're like, oh gosh, I see 100 books. I want all 100. Or, hey, I already have those 3 books, so I just need these 97. When you do a service or a package with Upskilled, you get to go into that bookstore, you get to go into my digital library and say, okay, whatever resources I don't have, I want all of these and I want to brand them to myself. I want my company's logo on them. I want to tweak them and customize them to how I operate them. So I spend my time kind of in the background building dashboards for you. That's another huge thing is it's like sitting on top of Excel of like, here's all of your analytics. Now we're going to make it look easy to read and we're actually going to do something with this data versus just letting it sit in Excel for 500 years. So I kind of package it all up in a pretty bow. I'll meet with, key subject matter experts throughout the process in your company. And then I present the project to you and kind of pass that baton and you take it and you implement it with your company.
Love it. That's awesome. So last question I have for you, Danielle. We've talked about a lot of things. You have a ton of knowledge, but like we just talked about the training room, we want everybody listening to just take action. What is one thing any listener could do within the next 24 hours to start to move their business forward in this space?
This is my favorite. Okay. So what I love to do is I love to get a massive whiteboard. You can do it on a piece of paper, whatever you got. Make a training web. And so like quite literally, like in the middle of your web, you're going to write the year and sky is the limit. Like I don't want you to think budget. I don't want you to think about all of these limitations that you have. I want you to think of all of the ideas that you have for training and branch them out from your web. And then over time, you're going to branch those out even further. The reason that I say don't worry about budget, because you're going to say, well, I don't have $1 million for this. How am I going to do it? As you look at this web throughout the year and you see all of these training goals that you have for your company, you're going to start to think about the idea a little bit differently and be like, okay, well, I was kind of tunnel vision for how to do that originally, but now 6 months later, I have a different spin-off idea that I could do for this and just keep it posted everywhere, cross little webs off, cross little bubbles off as you complete them. But it's such a fun exercise that will absolutely set you on trajectory for the year.
There you go, y'all. Get out your whiteboard, get out a big piece of paper. The key is to just get started. Danielle Wernert, thanks again for coming on the show, sharing your journey and providing a ton of actionable advice, insight, wisdom, guidance, all the good things for the blue collar business owners out there as we continue our journey to prosperity. But before we sign off, Danielle, where can the listeners go to keep in touch with you, learn more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I am very active on LinkedIn. So just Danielle Wernert, you'll find me there. I also would recommend you check out our Upskilled website. So www.upskilledconsulting.com. Sorry, I can't even talk today. So yeah, check us out on our website or send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a conversation with you.
Awesome, Danielle. Thanks again for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And before we go, as you know, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to creating consistent, positive cash flow. However, the journey starts with making sure you are priced right so you can have a growing and more profitable business. I've created a super easy to use pricing calculator for everyone in the trades. You will no longer have to guess what you should charge. You'll no longer have to call around your competition and see what they charge. This calculator is easy to use and will provide you confidence and clarity that you're actually priced right. It also comes with a step-by-step PDF guide and a video walkthrough. So head on over to thebluecollaradvisors.com/price. thebluecollaradvisors.com/price to download it today and so you can start implementing it tomorrow. Until next time, remember, what got you here won't get you there. If you are ready for different results, it's time to start doing things differently.